that one of the biggest challenges that they found is that the training and business change is an afterthought. Heard this one before. And money is spent on the tool and the implementation. What strategies do you recommend to overcome this? So I think Nick's got quite a few things to say on this one. Bearing in mind you and I have been in this position before. You carry on, Nick.
So you know, for me, we're building the business case for investment in change management and training, right? So it's and I totally agree with you. And I always it's a really good question actually, because it's you know, the solution, the ERP solution is only going to deliver the benefits you're wanting to achieve if people adopt it as you envisioned it. Yeah. The solution itself is not going to do that. So, you know, I always start, and I've done this a number of times, is just start at the beginning and say, okay, these are all the benefits I want to achieve. And I know which stakeholders are going to help me achieve those benefits or which activities. What would happen if I did nothing? And if you do that, you can come up with a quick metric and say, actually, I would probably have a few people who are early, you know, adopters, navigators who would do stuff just naturally, they're intuitive. I might achieve 20% of my goals. But you think about the investment you're making, and if I don't invest in change management, I only do 20% of my goals. So I think for me, that kind of quick, it's not quick, actually, I shouldn't say that. It is quite detailed, but you can actually put some numbers against it and say, if I were to do nothing, I might achieve 20% of my goals. And then you say, okay, which are my priority goals and how can I make sure I deliver those? It's a really, really useful thing for a case. If I was investing in a new business, I would expect exactly the same thing. Whereas demonstrate my return on investment. Yeah. How are you going to measure that? Show me when you're going to achieve it and how. And I think it's the same for this. We need to think about how it's going to be measured. And, you know, and I think that's the other thing. So doing that assessment up front and also being really, really clear on the metrics and how you're going to measure them. Yeah. And you can then wrap all your other tools and methodologies around that to say, okay, if I want to get from A to B, these are the things I need to do. But I treat it as like building a business case.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you. Shelley, anything to add to that? I've got Ali's got his hand up, so I'm going to
just very
give him a
quickly
chance to talk. Yeah, go on.
I guess just the from a training perspective as well, it's about being very, very clear very early on about what is and isn't included within, you know, from your SI. And so I think sometimes they can make reference to training packages and things like that, but actually, you know, being very clear on what that actually means and whether that's just actually training for your project team avoids the pitfall, you know, understanding what that is up front avoids that issue of getting later on down the line and suddenly thinking, oh, actually, that's not going to sort of sort all our end users out. And so having that clarity up front about what is and isn't included then gives you the space and the time to then think about how you actually want to then train your end users before it's too late.
You've just poked the bear there, Shelley. And you know, I know that quite often talking to a number of customers, they say, well, we've got train the trainer training. And that my definition of train the trainer is us teaching our clients' team to train their users. It's about imparting knowledge to teach someone how to train. Train the trainer, as it's known from you know, consultancy to customer, is knowledge transfer from one part of the team to the other, isn't necessarily training. So you know, I could go on about that one for some time, but I won't. But yeah, you've poked the bear there, I'm afraid. But I totally agree. Ali has got his hand up. I'm gonna allow Ali's mic a second. Hopefully, we'll be able to hear him. Ali, can you? I don't think we can hear you actually. Perhaps if you've got a question, Ali, you could pop it in the chat for us.
Yeah. Well, waiting, Tony. I just looked at another question that I can answer from Katerina.
Yes.
Earlier, she was asking about would you recommend focusing on getting bystanders, cynics, and victims turned and on board, or focus more on increasing the positive ambassadors and navigators? So my answer to that is I think that having, although cynics can be useful and they can provide a good sounding board for some of your ideas, I think ultimately you want to get everyone to the position of navigator. If people spend the whole duration of a program in a cynical or a victim mode, I think, you know, it it can that negativity consistently can spread. So I think unfortunately the answer is you need to do both. You need to keep your navigators as navigators because they are really useful people, but you do need to bring those people up towards there, particularly from a victim and a cynic perspective. So both are important. I know that's probably not the answer you're looking for, but I would address both.
So Tony's popped a question in the chat here. It says ERP program teams are quite often large SI project managers, business leads, etc. What is their role in managing change, and how do we make that clear? As often people think that change manager is responsible for all things change. I've got a feeling Tony might be a change manager, but yeah, Nick, you got any points there?
So yeah, I think obviously everyone has a role. Just to give an example, so just a very quick example of a typical ERP activity, design workshops. And I think the change management team might be responsible for helping the organization develop a vision, and help communicate that vision. And so, it's often one of the things, do the vision, communicate it, make sure it's clear. But I think if people are like your solution architect or your functional leads, when they're actually doing their workshops, design workshops, and talking through process, I think it's important for them also to be on the same message, because when you're in the weeds, it's quite difficult. It's quite easy to forget about why you're doing this. And so if you can have everybody on board in terms of, hey, let's remind ourselves of the vision. Why are we doing this? What are we hoping to achieve? And then they can make some design decisions based on that. It's almost like seeing the wood for the trees. Sometimes you get so involved in the detail, you forget about the overall goals. So I'd say, yes, we're responsible for the tactical things, like making sure we do communications and training, prepare people. But we also need every other team member to be supportive on the same messaging, would be my comment on that.
Yeah. Define roles, responsibilities, and actions against those. Ali, thank you. He's got his question in the chat now. We've got that right on the hour, so hopefully we can answer this without spending too much time of everyone else's time. But Ali's asking, as a company who want to implement an ERP system, should they ask their implementing company their plan for change management, or they should hire a change management consultant to be beside them during implementation? Could be one of both. But Nick, what's your view of that?
So I think that depending on your experience, I've worked with some organisations who are very invested in their change management. However, my argument always would be is that and I suppose this is a selling point. Now, if I'm going to a company, I can say I can bring experiences from other industries, from other experiences. I can maybe bring tools and methodologies that you may not be aware of. So although I can give you a plan, it's a bit like I said before, the plan is just the tools and the tasks to do it. Being able to adapt is one of the key things. And so, a change management consultant who does this on a day-to-day basis will be able to recognize the signals and react and adapt. And I think I would always encourage at least a partnership of some form.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think obviously working with Hitachi now for many years, I know you have a very effective change management practice, and we obviously interface very closely with you guys on a number of projects, and that's worked very successfully in the past. So, when selecting your SI, Ali, I would suggest that you need to investigate their change experience and their change management expertise. And if you're not convinced with that, then perhaps they're not the right SI for you. But also I would suggest you need to have a change manager on the client side of the program as well, who integrates and interacts with the SI change management team too. So it's a bit of both, really, isn't it?